Hey guys, my name is Matimeo, and today I want to ask the question, how do you personally measure someone's skill in a first-person shooter? Do you judge another player by their kill-death ratio, by their accuracy, maybe their win-loss ratio? Because the reason why I bring this up is that DICE is asking this very question right now about Battlefield 4's skill system. It looks like they have finally listened to our criticism that the skill number on the battle log means absolutely nothing right now. Every time I check on my battle log, it's constantly changing. It's never really indicative of how well I do on the battlefield. And for a lot of people, they just look at this stat and they roll their eyes because it doesn't really mean anything whatsoever. DICE would like to change that. And so what I would like to do today is talk about this very topic. How can we better define a player's skill, allocate that to a number, so that when we compare our skill to other players, it is a better indication of how well they do on the battlefield. When we look at other games like Counter-Strike, for example, their skill and matchmaking system is much more simplistic compared to the Battlefield franchise. It's only 5 versus 5. In a 5v5 scenario, your individual skill is going to mean a hell of a lot more compared to a 64-player server like you have in the Battlefield franchise. In that case, win-loss ratio means a lot more. Your kill-death ratio means a lot more. How well you play the objective by planting or disarming the bomb. There's a lot less numbers that you have to think about, and while it's not perfect, like don't get me wrong, the Counter-Strike matchmaking system and their skill system is not flawless. I know that it's not flawless, but we start to compare it to the Battlefield series and basing it off of what we can do in that game, things become infinitely more complicated. And so one suggestion that I've heard bounce around a lot is that your skill score should entirely revolve around how many team-based actions you are performing on the battlefield. Are you arming MCOMs? Are you taking objectives? Are you laying down ammo and health bags consistently? Are you spotting people out in the distance? The more frequently you perform these actions on the battlefield, that's gonna raise your skill score. You accumulate all of the different rounds, how well you perform in every single one of them, how many team-based actions you are performing, and that's gonna give you your average skill at the end of the day. And while I will agree that this is a very integral part of what makes a good player in Battlefield, I think it's an incomplete picture, and just to measure a player's entire skill around just team-based actions is missing the mark slightly. I know a lot of people out there say that kill-death ratio doesn't matter in Battlefield because if you're not playing the objective, your kill-death ratio doesn't mean anything, and I will agree with you that wholeheartedly. If someone is just camping in a corner, going for kills the entire time, they're not helping. But someone's kill-death ratio does mean something. When I'm playing with a player that has a 4 KD and they're running around playing the objective, I would say that that player is significantly better than someone who is just constantly dying by bum rushing the objective. Sure, that player is constantly going for the MCOM, they may be arming it constantly, which is going to be hugely beneficial for their team, but if another player is doing the exact same thing, but just destroying everyone because they have amazing accuracy, their kill-death ratio is through the roof, I would say that that player has a higher skill value, like they're just a better player overall, and so you have to take that kill-death ratio, their accuracy, how well they do at just killing people, into consideration. And then we move on over into the vehicle section of the game. Vehicles are, of course, a huge part of Battlefield, and so how do you measure a player's skill when all they do every single day is fly around in a jet? Jets can win and lose you a round in the Battlefield franchise. I have gone against jet pilots where they destroy everything down on the ground. It doesn't matter what it is. It can be infantry, vehicles. They are paving the way for their team to win because if you have no tanks, if you have no helicopters to back you up as an infantry, there's no way they're going to be able to capture any points on Gold Mud Railways. Like their skill level is through the roof. The thing is, though, is that they're not taking objectives. They're not really doing any team-based actions. Yes, they're causing pure chaos. They're blowing up a lot of enemy teams' vehicles, but at the end of the day, they're not placing down ammo. They're spotting, but they're not giving out health. And so how do we then take their skill in consideration when we compare it to everything else in the game? To make matters even more complicated, I realize that things are getting kind of ridiculous at this point. How then do you compare someone who only plays as an infantry player to someone who is amazing in a vehicle? Me personally, I would say that I'm above average as an infantry unit, but I am god-awful in a jet, or I'm at least mediocre in a tank. Do you take all of my skills and average them? Because if that was the case, my skill is going to be a lot lower than someone who is probably just mediocre across the board in all vehicles. Some of you might say, yeah, that's exactly how the skill level should be allocated. But when I'm just playing as an infantry, you would think that, hey, I'm actually having a lot of influence here because I am above average in that category. It gets ridiculous. And so after giving this a lot of thought, the only conclusion that I can come up with is that if they do want to have this skill number, then they should probably separate it into different categories. If there was a vehicle category, or better yet, even separate it further, where there was a jet category, LAV, and tank, then we could really focus on what makes a good jet pilot and kind of separate all of the other stuff that doesn't make any sense. Like I said, when you're a jet, it really comes down to how many people you're killing, how many tanks or other vehicles that you're destroying. Doesn't really matter how many objectives that you're taking, that doesn't really matter here, but it really matters when we get into when you're playing as an infantry. The infantry can be its own different category. Then maybe we can have a teamwork category. I really think that that might be the only way to better represent how well someone performs on the battlefield. There is just so much to look at. Like, this game is so complicated, especially since there's 64 people running around on Conquest Large. Even on something like Rush, things can get just ridiculous, and I can't think of any other way to come up with one value, one way of representing all of these different things to really represent how someone does and how they perform in Battlefield 4. The only other suggestion that I thought could maybe work is really just have it focus on your win-loss ratio. While I know that you personally may not have that much of an influence on a huge 64-man server, over time, your average, if you're playing the objective, if you're getting a lot of kills, if you're doing a lot of these actions, your win-loss ratio should technically be higher. And so that could be one way that we could measure your skill. But if that's the way that we're measuring your skill, then we can just look at your win-loss ratio. And so this is where I'd like to get your guys' take on this. How do you personally measure someone's skill in a first-person shooter? Do you base it off of how well they just kill you over and over and over again? Is it their team-based actions? There's really no simple answer here. Even the one that I recommended has a lot of problems. Like that category system that I recommended is not flawless, and I understand that, but if you guys have a way that you like to measure someone's skill, let us know down below. This is the reason why DICE is asking for our help, and so if you guys have any awesome suggestions that you think would be perfect, let everyone know down below. But yeah, guys, that is about it for today's video. I thought this would just be a fun topic to talk about. A little crazy, I know, but I at least had some fun with it, and so I hope you guys did as well. But until tomorrow, have a good one, and take it easy.